what you're saying is close. Federal Reserve's notes are not always promises to pay or promissory notes. You can see right here, I had a little conversation with the AI, and it was not that it would not agree at all that it is a promissory note at first, because it was coming from the standpoint of when it goes out into the public, it is legal tender and all of this other stuff. Okay. It wasn't, let's remove this. It wasn't until the second question. Okay. Federal Reserve, yes, but I said, so the first question I asked is, so under the principles of contracts and other principles of what constitutes promissory note under the principles of bills and notes, the two parties to it are controlling. When it comes to Federal Reserve notes, the parties to the contract are the United States and the Federal Reserve. So would Federal Reserve notes be akin to promissory notes? And if that be true, then once they are put into circulation, they would be considered bearer notes. Now, to be clear, this is before the Federal Reserve notes enter the public. This is while they are in possession of the Treasury. So, now it didn't like that response. You can see the response, part of the response here. It said, yes, they are indeed obligations of the United States and all that stuff, right? Let's see. So, and so my second question was yes, but you are looking at for when they enter into commerce for public use. I said while in possession of the United States Treasury before they enter public use. Said Federal Reserve notes are indeed akin to promissory notes while in the possession of the United States Treasury before they enter public use, according to 12411. Federal Reserve notes are obligations of the United States and are issued at the direction of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, making advances to Federal Reserve banks. This indicates that while in the possession of the Treasury, they function similarly to promissory notes. Once the notes are put into circulation, they are considered legal tender and bearer notes. So people run around saying that they are promissory notes. They either don't understand what a promissory note and a bearer note is in its entirety, or they haven't done enough research. See, this is no different than a mortgage. A mortgage is a promissory note between the mortgagor and the mortgagee. But once the bank decides to sell it to another company, it is now could be considered a bearer note, especially if the other party was not a party to the contract. So just think about that. Now, it is a similar thing. Look at this. I'm going to zoom in. You see this? Everybody would say this is a check. It says payroll check on the border, but pay to the order of, or back then on the order of the superintendent. Okay, but look what it says on who it's supposed to go to: WH Fithing or bearer. So it ceased being the note the minute it went to the bearer. So the bearer can only receive the value of the note. It does not need to be negotiated. That's why you can take a $5 bill and it is a bearer instrument because you get the value of that note. So It wasn't a promise to pay you, it was a bearer instrument once you have it. Just like if W.8 Fithing takes this payroll check to his neighbor and he owes his neighbor 16 cents. Um, and he looks at his neighbor, do you have change? Oh, yes, I got 16 cents. He gives him this payroll check. His neighbor now becomes the bearer of that note and has the authority to receive that value. Okay? This has also got all the elements of a bill of exchange because a check is a bill of exchange. So when people are saying that the Federal Reserve notes are promissory notes, they are not wrong, but they're wrong in application. They are promissory notes as long as they're in the possession of the Treasury, because the contract is between the Treasury and the Federal Reserve. And I put a video out earlier last week, I think, that the Treasury is the one that prints the notes, not the Federal Reserve. But that being said, once it goes into the public, it is now a bearer instrument or a bearer note. So just consider that.